According to an article in the Journal of Sex Research titled Pornography Consumption, Modality, and Function in a Large Internet Sample, 91.5% of men and 60.2% of women reported having consumed pornography in the past month. Wow, guys. Well, this is the topic today. So we are going to focus more on the women aspect of this. I think there's a lot of videos. There's already a lot of discussion on men and pornography, by the way. For those of you, I know it's pretty obvious. I'm calling it pornography. And there might be one or two of you like, why does she keep saying corn? She's not using the right word.
It's cone. Look at this.
Well, it's because YouTube will shadow ban or ban this video, or just in general punish me for using the real word. So I'm going to be using corn throughout this video. Just a heads up for those of you who don't know about that. Okay, as I mentioned later in this video, we're going to focus more on the women's side of this, but I do want to quote some studies as well so we can kind of get an idea of where we're at in today's world and relationship with corn. A 2005 study done by Geert Martin Holt showed Danish adults aged 18 to 30 found 98% of the men and 80% of the women had seen pornography. Now, there's this myth that Christians are like immune to corn, or they just don't watch it. And sadly, that is far from the truth. Christian men and women are also, they also give into this temptation, unfortunately. And it is also something that Christians also struggle with. A 2014 Barna Group survey revealed 65% of U.S. non-Christian men and 64% of U.S. Christian men looked at pornography at least once a month. So the numbers aren't too far off. It's just something. It doesn't mean, obviously, Christianity, we know that corn is not something that is supported. It's something that is seen as sinful, as wrong, but it doesn't mean that Christians don't deal with it or don't deal with the struggle as well. According to the Institute of Family Studies, 74% of men who report having watched pornography in the past 24 hours say they have felt self-conscious or insecure in the past week. It just goes to show that corn doesn't solve your problems, and if anything, creates new problems. Not to mention, I mean, there have been studies done on MRIs. MRIs literally showing changes in the brain. And you could see this in the MRI scan. The three primary modalities of pornography consumed were written pornography, pictures, and videos. So videos are consumed obviously most often, but interestingly for women, they're also more likely to consume written pornography than men. When I say written, I mean like books, very erotic books. Erotica.
Spicy.
For the purpose of today's video, like I mentioned earlier today, I do want to focus on the 80% of women who have seen pornography or who have struggled with pornography. I think there is a lot of focus on men, and there are a lot of videos on it because it is something that I would say maybe has affected men on a larger scale, but that doesn't mean that doesn't affect women at all. And so, and by the way, I think corn has a detrimental effect on society as a whole. I just think it's important to talk about the problem. It's not like, burying your head in the sand and pretending like it doesn't exist or nothing's happening. I don't think it does if anything, it makes things worse. I think sometimes the best way to solve something and to create a solution is by digging into the root problem and the root issue and discussing it. There's also this sense of shame. That's why a lot of people won't discuss, especially amongst women. I would say there's a little bit more shame on women, not just from men, but from other women as well. And I think because of that shame, no one's willing to discuss it, and they just kind of deal with this problem by themselves and in solitude. And I feel like that's the hardest way to deal with the problem, is by yourself. Visual porn, although it does affect women, is primarily made by and targeted at men, whereas erotic books are corn in words, corn on pages, not your images necessarily, but it makes your brain create images. And I'd argue it's usually made by women for women. So a lot of these erotic books, you'll see that they're written by other women and they're targeted at women, or their audience is women. They know that their audience is women, so it's written for women. So it's written in a certain way. I'm not to say that men aren't into erotic books, but I would say its effect works more with women. And guys, the sad reality is that especially today, women are being exposed, and young women are being exposed to porn more and more, especially with the ease of access online. As a teen, all the girls in my school were reading Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey.
Bella! Where the hell have you been, Luca?
Please, no! No!
No!
Now, Twilight, I wouldn't call it an erotic book. There are scenes in it that are a little bit more than PG-13, if you know what I mean. But 50 Shades of Grey, for sure, was absolutely, I would categorize it as an erotic book. I remember there being parts in the book that I wasn't even sure what was going on. I was just kind of like, what? I didn't even know you could do that. And I was just so innocent about it. And, looking back on it now as an adult, I'm like, I probably shouldn't have been reading that, and nor should have my, fellow peers at that age. But, and like that's the thing about books, especially amongst women, it's kind of a sneaky way, like at face value, it appears innocent and almost celebrate, like, hey, she's reading a book. Like my parents, they didn't know. They were like, well, we're just happy she's reading, she's not watching TV or on her phone, she's reading a book. Little did they know this book had some crazy things in it. And not to mention, it's kind of like a side note thing, the relationships in these books, in both Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, were unhealthy relationships. And it's just kind of, this is probably topic for a whole other video, but not only was the sexual side of it being very normalized, but the very unhealthy relationship and dynamic between the love interest was very unhealthy. And I feel like it kind of normalized that unhealthy behavior. And I wouldn't say it's the factor. I would just say there's many, many factors that contribute to today's disastrous dating scene, dating world.
How's your day?
Sucked.
I'm just saying it's probably one of the factors where we had the wrong idea of like, well, I thought this was normal, this happened in the book, and it was romantic and it was sexy, and it was, we had a totally different idea of it. And so when we look for it in real life and we get a monster and we realize they're not the same thing, and in reality it's a completely wrong thing to pursue, unfortunately a lot of times we learn the hard way, and that's really the sad part. Again, I think it's just one of the factors, one of the many factors. Okay, so for a solution, because I know I don't like to address problems and then like not have a solution, not have, okay, well, like what about, you leave the video feeling completely depressed and like, okay, well, now I just feel like I'm having a bad day. Okay, so I already know I'm gonna be accused of like, you're such a prude. Like I feel like even having this conversation makes it automatically people just assume you're being a prude. Like I'm looking at sex like a bad thing, and no, it's not. I look at sex as a good thing. I'm married. I like sex is a good thing. God created it. Sex in itself is good. It's just when we pervert it, abuse it, and use it as a way to objectify another human being that it becomes an issue. So I do think there are boundaries like anything. It's like chocolate cake. Okay, maybe that's not a good analogy, but chocolate cake, it's good. It's good in itself, but it's when you abuse it. It's when you have it for breakfast. It's not healthy for you. When you have it multiple times a day, when it's affecting your ability to function throughout the day because all you can think about is this chocolate cake. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between chocolate cakes. I think you can consume chocolate cake in moderation, whereas I don't think it's healthy to consume corn at all in general. I think the way corn in itself, the way it's perverted sex and objectifying another human being, and in a way it's like abusing yourself, and also not to mention, we dehumanize the person that's on screen, and they, it's totally fair to say they dehumanize themselves as well. So by watching it, why contribute to that? If you agree with that, why would you contribute to it and give it a view? Obviously, it's like any product in a capitalist society. If there's a demand for it, then they're going to provide a supply for it. So if we could decrease the demand for it, I think that would be guarantee a decrease in the supply for it. I do think that being aware of what corn can do to someone, especially in creating addictions, and not to mention, like I said earlier, the MRI scans. So there's like actual effects that you could see on an MRI scan of what it does to the brain, literally. So there's that. There's a physical side. There's also even just of course, the psychological side and the emotional side, and the way it affects your future relationships. And it just affects the way you think as well. And no one goes into it thinking, oh, I can't wait to get addicted. Like nobody's thinking that addiction will start, okay? And nobody. So it starts off in very slow doses, just like a drug. And then suddenly that control just slips through your hands and you've landed yourself into a very deep hole that you cannot dig yourself out of. And it's only worse when you don't want to tell people about this deep hole. And like I said, it becomes worse when you're by yourself. And that's why I always think it's something that you should always seek help from other people to help you get out of a hole. It's a lot easier to get out of a deep hole when somebody's helping you.
Okay, I'm stuck in a hole!
Now, I'm a big believer in preventing things from happening in the first place. So obviously my advice, which would be more practical, especially for somebody who hasn't been exposed or doesn't have an addiction. My advice would be just to skip those parts in the book or in the movie, especially if it's like very graphic and just doesn't really contribute to the storyline and doesn't take, the plot. Sometimes I feel like there's sex scenes that have nothing to do with the plot, especially nowadays. It just doesn't serve the storyline. I get it if it's somewhat you can kind of suggest it, but I feel like now movies, they are profiting off of it in a way, kind of like throwing it in there so that they could, add like, oh, spicy movie. I don't know. My advice again would be to skip those parts or just don't expose yourself to it. And again, this is more just practical advice. It's easier to do. It's very concrete things you can do. But I know in today's age it's almost impossible to avoid it completely. And like I said, I wouldn't want you to also get into the mindset to associate sex with bad, sex bad, because it's not bad in itself. If it's done in a very respectable manner, it's good. Like I said, I want to make that clear. I don't think sex is bad in itself. I think what's happened is it's been exploited. Something good has been exploited. That's what I mean when I say perverted, is that it's been exploited and turned into something and used for something that it was never meant for. But I understand that sometimes it's impossible to get away from it. So in those situations, I would say another thing you can do is to keep them humanized. I think corn in general, again, dehumanize it, kind of makes you forget that they're human. You see them as like flesh and like an object for your own, I guess, in a way, selfish reasons. So when you remind yourself to humanize them, it kind of separates that and it makes you see them for what they are, which is a human. And what do I mean by this? Okay, well, um, maybe if you have no way of escaping and you just have to get through the scene, just ask yourself, this is gonna sound crazy. I don't know, some of you think, oh, this, like, what the heck is she like advising us? Oh no, but I'm telling you, it does work. Okay. You are watching the scene and then you say, oh, I wonder what he does for work. I wonder what books he likes to read. Or I wonder what his insecurities are. And like, do I have any of those insecurities? Okay, I know it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, but trust me, it works because you're humanizing him. You're seeing him as a person. You're seeing him as a body and soul. You know, he has interests, he has insecurities, has struggles, just like any human. Um, and you keep asking those types of questions until the scene is over.
I wonder what they're like.
and and that way you don't get carried away and off to a shallow land where you separate his humanity from his body. And likewise for guys, if you're watching this, same thing with girls. You want to keep them, humanize them, remind yourself that they are a human being with feelings and emotions and struggles. Anyways, so that'll kind of take it down a little bit. Now, there is also a deeper psychological side to this. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, so it's not my area, but I really appreciate listening to psychologists and professors and authors like Arthur Brooks. He's great. They have really great ideas and advice for tackling it from more of a psychological standpoint, especially if you're already dealing with the addiction and you're trying to get out of it. I know it could be more complicated, and obviously that would require some type of therapy and something deeper. But these are more just like kind of like on the surface level, just something to avoid. I'm telling you, it's much easier to avoid getting into the hole than it is to wait till you fall into the hole and then try to get out. Well, that's it for now, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, especially on such a very touchy topic, to say the least. It's a very sometimes it can be a little awkward talking about it, but hey, I think if there's one thing to normalize, it should be normalizing talking about problems that we are facing in society and how we can address them, how we can find real solutions. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And leave a comment. What do you think? What are some other tips and tricks that you have? And I'd love to hear. Bye.